What's going on, guys? My name is Blake, or Brother Blake, and welcome to the first ever video of the Lighthouse of Christ YouTube channel. I'd like to begin with saying that with what I am talking about today, I am putting up a viewer discretion warning, as this video and its themes may not be suitable for a younger audience. There will be a 5-second timer before we go into the conversation of lust and its contents. Now that the timer is up, we can begin the conversation about lust and its contents. Lust has been an ongoing issue for me ever since elementary school. I've been exposed to it by the age of 15, and for 7 years I've continued to act upon it. Internally, before I became a Christian, I felt that this response of mine to act was only natural, considering that my body is, bound to go through certain developments throughout its course of life. But as I grew older and throughout high school, I started to feel more and more depressed and found myself becoming addicted to it and the pleasures and the senses and the escape of reality that I was able to go into while I was dealing with some conflict in my personal life, to say the least. I gotta be honest, even after becoming a Christian and knowing that Jesus is God, I've still had these issues, I've tried a lot of times to abstain from it. I would try to use app blockers, or I would talk to certain people of mine on Discord or Instagram when I'm tempted during those times, but I've always found myself coming back to the same issue with feeling as though I'm rejected before I go back into my habits. I just want to say to anybody who has a corn addiction, or to those who know anybody who has a corn addiction, it's not too late to search for help. Watching pornography on a daily basis can leave you prone to losing gray matter and can weaken the impulse control in your prefrontal cortex in your brain. It took me a while to realize that I had been feeling rejected, because I have internally numbed that feeling by persisting past it until I stopped and confronted that feeling after watching a TED Talk. But before I can have a TED Talk about that, it would be preferred of me to discuss what or who I felt rejected by. In my childhood, I felt rejected by teachers when it took me a while to understand a subject in school, while the majority of students would understand them with ease. I felt rejected by many of my classmates and people my age that would look at me like I was weird or more overweight. I felt rejected in having people around me not involve me in how they were feeling, and no one would understand that I would have a deeply rooted feeling of needing approval. During those times where I feel that I couldn't be rejected and needed approval, I would go out of my way to watch Korn. The science behind it is that the dopamine releases in the part of the brain known as the striatum when I actually watch it. This is the part of the brain that operates motor control, action planning, decision making, and reward processing. Thank you, Google. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of these feelings are due to me being medically retarded, as I've been diagnosed with autism, and as someone who is living with this disability, it's extremely difficult to not be enticed by something that I've grown with for roughly a decade. And at this point, I can't say what day and what hour I can quit Korn for good due to how easily I can access it, but I at least recognize Korn brings a false sense of approval. I've been through many rejections that I haven't listed in this video, for it could take a whole day's worth of getting it all on a silver platter, and chances are there will be many more people that will reject me in this life, and I accept now that it will only be inevitable to go through. So the TED Talk I referred to earlier is one by Jason Marr, a pastor and a person who had struggled with pornography for 23 years of his life. His quote that inspired me to make this video is the idea that he brought up around the 6-minute mark, which he says, "Maybe the cure for addiction isn't even in striving for approval. Imagine what would happen if we wouldn't allow the rejection of life to negatively shape our identity." This statement from Pastor Jason had struck close to home for me deeply, because I've always felt from a young age that people who have died in my family, who I still hold close in my heart, and the separation of my family had hardened my heart And I believe it was those small wounds in my life that had bled out to cause me to spiral into addiction just because I could not handle the rejection. Jason had given me the epiphany that the rejection that I face on a day to day basis is something that can change for the better. I think a really good example of this, of what I'm talking about, is when Jesus was mocked and spit on and beaten and whipped and eventually crucified on a cross, essentially being rejected by the Sadducees and the Pharisees. And he confronted that while also being the perfect atonement for our sins. I'm just going to leave the video off with this. As Christians, we know that we live with Christ. So, furthermore, the rejection from worldly ideals and people as they gnash their teeth while they're full of hate and lust, we should always give them the response of a smile and a warm heart full of hope and love, catered on keeping each other accountable and knowing that the love of Christ is greater than any conceivable weapon, even when the giants of our insecurities overwhelm us. That is all for today. I just wanted to thank you all for watching the first ever episode of the Lighthouse of Christ YouTube channel. I will see you all in the next one.